Hello, everybody. I'm Cheney, and I would like to present our next speaker, Kiara Bradshaw. Kiara Bradshaw received her Master's of Public Health with a focus in health education from Rollins School of Public Health in 2019. She has worked in abstinence health and adolescent health and education since 2012. In her spare time, she enjoys reading, watching cooking shows and sports, and visiting the beach.
Okay, I think it's time for me to go. So hi, everyone. Like she said, my name is Kiara Bradshaw, and I work with Fulton County Board of Health in the Division of Health Promotion with our Adolescent Health and Youth Development Program. I want to thank GCAP for this opportunity. It's been a really great summit this far, and I've enjoyed everyone's presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and continue on this day of great talking about sex education, and this talk is going to be about how we continue to talk and effective adult youth communication about sex and relationships. So for those of us who are youth serving professionals, this is some advice we can give to the parents that we work with of the youth we work with. And if you're a parent yourself, you can apply this, in your own interactions with your child or other young people in your lives. COVID has given us a great opportunity, to spend more time at home with our family. So hopefully this is especially useful during this time. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to open it up to the comment box. So when you think about the talk, we're thinking about what is it? What does the talk mean to you? What do you discuss? When does it happen? And why is it important? So if you don't mind, go ahead and put your thoughts in the comment box of what the talk is. So again, what does the talk mean to you? What do you discuss when you have the talk? Okay, so sex education, talking to a young person about sex and reproduction. Yeah, so those are some great responses. So as we move forward in this presentation, I just have a few points I want everyone to keep in mind as we talk about the talk. Talking to your kids about their awareness, information. I think the talk is broad. Where's the start? Stages of child and great. Yep. So those are all points that I'm going to address. So the talk should happen early. So discussing sex and relationships in various capacities should happen when children are young. So, as soon as kids are able to talk, we should be talking to them about their bodies, and then the talk should progress as they get older. It should be a conversation, so not a one-sided monologue. So both adults and youth should contribute to the understanding of what is being discussed. And lastly, it should be ongoing, which is what this talk is about. It should not be a one and done situation. It should happen multiple times as youth reach various stages of development and social milestones. And guess what? The more you do it, the more comfortable it will become. So a lot of you had some great comments about what the talk is and what it should be about. So I'm just going to give you 10 topics that I recommend that the talk should cover. This obviously is not an exhaustive list, and this will obviously look different at the different ages and milestones in the youth's lives, but here are some things that should happen. And also, I just want to emphasize that these conversations might look slightly different in our conversations with LGBTQ youth. So first, it should be anatomy and puberty. You should have an understanding of their bodies, how it functions, and how their bodies will change as they grow. As adults, we want to focus on using proper medical terms. I think that was brought up earlier in one of the earlier conversations, but we should be using the correct anatomy, such as penis, vagina, breast, testes. So youth become familiar with hearing these words and not the slang that they hear on the from their friends. So second is consent. So from an early age, you should know that their bodies are their own and that no one should do anything to them that they don't feel comfortable with or agree with. So understanding the power of no and refusal skills, as well as respecting others' wishes the first time around, should also be covered. Sexual intercourse. So the good old birds and bees. You should understand what happens during intercourse as it relates to reproduction, but also the various acts themselves. Can you guys still see me? Okay. Um, the next one will be pregnancy. You should know how babies are actually made, not just storks dropping babies off, but that pregnancy happens as a result of sexual intercourse, both unprotected, and that pregnancy can happen as a result of protected sex as well. Sexually transmitted infections. So youth ages 15 through 19 are among the top age group for new STI infections. So to help prevent new cases in our young people, they should know how STIs are transmitted, what they are, the various types, so bacterial versus viral, syphilis, gonorrhea, chlamydia, HIV, HPV, herpes, letting them know what these different infections and diseases are, the symptoms and what to do if they suspect that they have one. And it's important to note that, as adults, we want to be sure that we're not stigmatizing STIs, because in the event that a young person eventually contracts one or has previously had one, we don't want to alienate them from disclosing that they've had an STI. Contraception. So at the very least, birth control should be introduced as a way to prevent pregnancy and STD. And as the adult, you can choose how deep you want to go with letting your young person know about the various forms of contraception. So relationships with friends and partners. Youth should have an understanding of what to expect in all relationships as they grow older. So from friendships to romantic relationships, and they should understand how to treat others and what constitutes a healthy relationship. So stemming off of that, intimate partner violence, the Partnership Against Domestic Violence, they had a great talk earlier in this, so they have some more resources if you're not familiar. But young people should know that abuse, whether physical, verbal, emotional, financial, is not okay. And they should know signs to look for so they can get help or help for their friends and leave relationships that display signs of abuse. Boundaries and expectations. So these should help youth form personal boundaries in their physical interactions and how they expect to be treated by others socially and romantically. And lastly, and one of the most important, is your personal and family values. So youth and adults should know what is important to their family as it relates to culture, religion, and family rules. So each of the previous 9 things that I mentioned might look different for your family based on what your beliefs are and honored in your household. But it's also important to note that as youth grow older, they'll begin to develop their own sense of values, and they may look different from what you personally believe. So it's important to find common ground and respect among these different topics. So that was a lot of information, but it speaks to why continuing the talk is important. So one of the main reasons is that trusted adults are the preferred source of information about sex and relationships. Believe it or not, youth always don't want to ask their friends or go to the internet to find out information. They value what the adults in their lives think, so being available to talk is key. Next, healthy sexuality and relationships are a part of overall health and well-being. Young people are sexual beings and they will eventually grow into adults. So we want to go ahead and establish healthy attitudes and values about sex as youth grow, so they'll have better overall health as they mature. And lastly, youth are less likely to make risky decisions if they are informed and know their personal and family values. So not talking with about sex and relationships actually increases the chance that youth will engage in risky behavior because they are uninformed or misinformed about sex and relationships. So having continued conversations can prevent youth from making decisions that they may later regret. So now that we've talked about what to cover and why it is important, we want to go ahead and, from an adult perspective, think about ways that we can continue to effectively communicate with the youth in our lives. So for my adults out there, tell me some things in the comments, like how do you approach conversations about sex and relationship with your young person or your child? So what are some strategies that you might use to approach the talk? Good setting, asking questions, asking open-ended questions. Yeah, those are all great tips. So I'm just going to go ahead and provide a few tips for positive communication. So you want to give your undivided attention. So if you want your young person, your child to take you seriously when you're talking, they need to know that they're the priority. That means, limiting distractions, and so they know that their focus, that they're receiving all of your focus. You want to take their questions and concerns seriously. So if your child or your young person comes to you with a question, that means they honestly want an answer. So as adults, some of these questions might seem self-explanatory or outlandish, or maybe sometimes even a bit funny. But as adults, we need to take them seriously. So you don't want to laugh or make it seem as if their questions aren't serious to you, or that it's a dumb question. So you want to answer their questions with respect. You want to listen for understanding. So listening is probably one of the most important communication skills that we can have. So when your young person is asking you a question or telling you something, don't listen just to respond. You want to listen and hear what they're saying. You want to use teachable moments. So when something happens, so whether that's, you're watching TV together and so a sexting comment happens, or somebody makes a sexual comment, if it's a lyric to a song, whether it's a comment for a friend or something that they told you happened at school, you can go ahead and address it then and not try to bring it back up later. So take those moments and use them as teachable moments for conversation. Share your own experiences. So don't be afraid to be honest and tell your child or your young person what you've gone through in your life. Being transparent can strengthen the bond between you and your youth, and it will increase your credibility with them and also provide an additional perspective that they may not have had. Ask open-ended questions. So someone mentioned that in the comments, but yeah, you definitely want to ask open-ended comments or questions if you want it to be a conversation and not a lecture. You have to give young people the chance to respond, give their thoughts and ask more questions about the things you're talking about. This is a big one, admitting when you don't know. So, if you're unsure about something that your child or your youth asks, be transparent and tell them that you don't know. This can be a great opportunity for you all to learn together about something that you're both unfamiliar about. Don't lie, because that can decrease their trust in you and their willingness to talk to you in the future. And lastly, be prepared to learn. So you will definitely learn a lot when you have these talks. You'll learn about yourself as a person. You'll learn about your young people as not only your child, but as the person they're becoming. And you might learn more about sex and relationships. Some things have likely changed since you've been a child and your time as a teen. So that's the beauty of these conversations, is being able to learn. So actions to avoid. So now that I've given you things to do, here's some things that you want to refrain from doing. So you want to not use hurtful language. And I'm not just referring to profanity. This can include using judgmental terms that place value. So terms such as fast, hoe, promiscuous. You want to not use those terms and place judgment. Slurs. So whether it's for some reason racial or sexual, your child might be a part of the LGBTQ community, and they might have told you they might have friends that are a part of that community. So you want to be sure that you're using words that are affirming and not negative. That includes like saying something like, "Oh, that's stupid," because that could be a very serious topic for them. You want to avoid jumping to conclusions. So this all goes back to listening to your youth. So don't assume things or go to the extreme when they ask you a question. Kids are going to make mistakes. They're not perfect, but we want them to learn from their mistakes and not assume the worst when they tell us things or make them think that the world is over because they've made a mistake. You want to support your child, even if something monumental or serious has happened, such as a pregnancy, STD, or sexual assault. So you want to refrain from shutting down your young person's concerns. So again, if your young person comes to you with a question or a situation, it matters to them. Listen and respond with love and care, and don't dismiss or ignore what they have to say. And you want to refrain from devaluing their experiences or feelings. So yes, youth are young. That doesn't mean that their feelings don't matter. What might seem like puppy love or a meaningless relationship to you, it probably means the world to them. So we want to know that their pain, their hurt, their joy, their love, it's all valid and it should be treated as such. So you want to not say things such as "that's silly" or "this won't matter tomorrow" or "it's not that serious." Statements like "thank you for telling me about this" or "I'm sorry that happened to you" or "it's okay that you feel that way" are much more affirming and helpful. And your child will appreciate that a lot more than you not taking them seriously. So feel free to go ahead and take a picture or screenshot this slide. But these are just some conversation starters that as adults we can use to approach the topic of sex and relationships with the young people in our lives. So notice that these are all open-ended questions. They allow youth the chance to respond and the opportunity to keep the conversation going. And they're also a great opportunity for you to find out more about your young person's perspective and what's going on in their life. I also recommend that you know your own answer to these questions before you ask, because they might turn around and ask you the same questions. So I'll just give you guys a few more seconds to take a picture of that. The last one is specifically, COVID related. Things are weird in the world right now. Is there anything you want to talk about that is worrying you? So there's a lot going on outside of COVID. A lot of crazy things are happening right now. So these are some great conversation starters. So now we're going to move into things from a youth's perspective. So I'm not sure if we still have any of the YAC members in the comments, but if you are, go ahead and tell some things, some tips that you use to approach your adults or your parents in the talking about sex and relationships. So you can go ahead and drop those in the comments if you're still here, but I'm going to go ahead and move along for the sake of time. So some tips for positive communication for youth. You want to go ahead and start the conversation. You don't always have to wait for an adult to start the conversation. If you have something you want to talk about or ask, go ahead and ask them. You don't always have to wait for them to bring it up. You want to give your undivided attention. Just like I said, for adults, you want to limit the distractions. So, pause that game, pause the movie, put your phone down. Make sure your body language is showing that you are listening and receptive to what they're saying. Be open to learn. So believe it or not, adults have had valuable experiences and information that can be helpful to you. They've had relationships, they've had heartbreak, they've had sex before. So while their experiences may may or may not be exactly the same as yours, you can definitely learn some things to do, or in some cases, some things not to do from them. So you will also learn more about them as a person, not just mom, dad, brother, sister, aunt, uncle, coach, whoever they are to you. So you want to be honest. So honesty may be painful. It might get you into some trouble, but in my experience, parents definitely value being honest and hurt versus being lied to. So, be ready to tell your parents things that you've done or what you've experienced. Ask direct questions. So if you want to know something, go ahead and ask it. Don't waste time dancing around the subject if you know what you want to talk about. Sometimes you might need to lead up with, some background context so they understand the question isn't just coming out of left field. But they're not mind readers. So if you want to know something, it's best policy just to ask and not hint about something. And lastly, you want to think before you speak. So sometimes you might want to react to something an adult asks or says, but gut reactions aren't always helpful, and they might actually end conversations before they even get started. So you want to take the time to think about your responses and your questions before they come out of your mouth. So some things for young people to avoid. You want to avoid becoming argumentative. So as hard as it might feel, adults just want to talk. Don't push back on everything that they have to say. Listen to understand. If you don't agree, find positive ways to express your disagreement. Don't raise your voice or roll your eyes. You want to also avoid jumping to conclusions. This applies for both parents and youth. So sometimes your parents or your adult you're talking to might not understand what you're trying to say, and they might misspeak. So instead of reaching your own conclusion or overreacting to what they say, try to understand what they're saying as well and get clarity before reaching your own conclusion about what they're saying. So don't shut down your parents or the adult that's talking to you's concern. The adults in your life, they just want you to grow up to be healthy and be a responsible adult and being a responsible young person. So they're asking questions because they care. So you don't want to dismiss their concerns. Don't tell them that their questions are stupid or that they shouldn't worry about you because they honestly care about you. So you want to find constructive ways to address their concerns. You want to don't avoid answering tough questions. This goes back to honesty. So the topics and discussions that these around might be uncomfortable, but growing into an adult includes growing emotionally. So part of this is stretching your comfort zone and telling your parents or adults how you feel and what you've been through. So you don't want to rush conversations. So all these conversations might not be ones that you're ready to have. But you also don't want to rush what they're saying just because you feel like they're being long-winded. Sometimes it's best to open up and get that conversation going. If you shut down, it's going to frustrate adults, and in turn, it's going to frustrate you. But if it's truly something that you don't feel comfortable talking about, don't be afraid to tell the person that I don't feel comfortable talking about this. You have to be affirmative in what you feel as well. So these are just some conversation starters for my youth that are out there. If you need to, go ahead and screenshot this as well. But like I told the adults, be prepared for the same questions to be asked of you. I love all of these because they can apply to so many different things. It just doesn't have to be about sex and relationships. It can be about your future goals, drugs and alcohol. So these are great open-ended questions that they can use. So I'm going to go ahead and move on because we're running out of time. So takeaways. So here are the key things I want you all to remember as you move forward and continue the talk. So the first is be confident and go ahead and start that conversation. Whether you're an adult or a child, remove your fear and get the conversation going. The conversation can't continue if you don't start it. So you want to be honest about your feelings and experiences. Being honest will enrich the talks and conversation and create trust and openness among one another, and that can carry on to other aspects of your relationship. Ask questions. So if you don't understand something, ask. If you need more clarity, ask. Questions are key to communication. Learn together. So these conversations will teach you more about each other as people, not just as a parent or a child or a young person to a facilitator. You'll have the opportunity to learn about each other and about unfamiliar topics together. And you want to keep the conversation going. So healthy relationships and sex can be achieved by keeping our young people informed and educated. So this means continuing these talks as they continue to grow older and experience different things in their lives. So here's a list of a few resources that I found have great information about these topics. Obviously GCAP, and I think they said the Parent Toolkit is available, but these other sites also have great information that you can use. This is just a little bit more about Fulton County Adolescent Health Youth and Development Program. If you're interested in more of our talks, we do have talks on a variety of other topics for both youth and parents, and you can visit us at our website, which can also be found on my Hop-In profile. And I'm gonna open it up for questions. So let me go through and see if anyone had any questions on here that I didn't address. Yes, Gabrielle, it's very important that you have all these conversations from a young age. The more you do it, the more comfortable the conversations will happen. It'll be less awkward, and your young person will be more receptive.
Thank you so much for that presentation.
Okay, I think that's my time. So yeah, if you have any more questions, feel free to email me. You can reach me. It's on my Hop-In profile, but thank you all so much for having me, and I truly appreciate it.
And I know you're going to be in our chat after this, so people who wants to connect with you can continue doing that. Thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you.
As mentioned, you can enter the chance to win a $250 gift card. Who in the chat would love to have $250 to spend at Amazon? I would apply, but I work for GCAP, so I'm not eligible. But you guys are. And I know someone asked earlier, so right now during the promotional contest, and it's about 20 days or so, it will ask you for your email each time. But you're going to find a lot of wonderful information there. So please check it out and share that resource.
Thanks, Brick. Also in the comments, I apologize. I was looking for the book list. So in the comments, we were talking about what are some really great, helpful books and some book lists that we can go ahead and provide for parents, not just for parents, but for the young people as well. And I listed a book list that GCAP recommends for parents and caregivers so that you all have information where you are confident in regards to having these open and honest conversations with your young people. So I posted the book list in the chat. Take a look at it. I will work with my wonderful colleague, Miss Alexandra Corey, in making sure that we email you all that book list along with the information for the Parent Toolkit. So please go ahead and register for the Parent Toolkit, and I am going to hop off and get ready for our next presentation. So I will see you all again shortly.